Second on the list here, Weston McKennie going to Leeds United on loan from Juventus. This is another one that needs to be put into context because I think it's a very interesting conversation. When Tyler Adams left Leipzig to go to Leeds, Tyler Adams was on the outside of the starting lineup looking in. Tyler Adams didn't really have any reason to believe his situation was going to get better as his team went on a really good run at the end of last season without him being a major contributor. And when Brendan Aronson left Salzburg to take the next step, to go from playing in a Champions League to playing in the Premier League. Because there's only so much development you can do in the Austrian Bundesliga. Right? It's how Salzburg work. They just continue to get a bunch of money for their players, reinvest that money, and then sell those players and do the same thing over and over again. They've perfected that art. So there are very specific reasons why going to Leeds was a beneficial outcome and a beneficial move for those two players moving forward in their careers. Weston McKennie has already started more games across all competitions for Juventus this season than Tyler Adams did in his entire final season at Leipzig. What Tyler Adams has been able to do through his performances at Leeds, through his performance in the World Cup, was not only rebuild, but enhance his stock. He had to rebuild it coming off of that disappointing season in Leipzig where he fell out of favor. He did that and then some. Playing every single game at Leeds, anchoring a midfield, allowed him that opportunity. And then he was spectacular for the U.S. in the World Cup. Weston McKennie does not need to do that. Weston McKennie was starting regularly for Juventus. Not necessarily every single game, but a good majority of them. He was a starter. Now, the other side to this is what's happening at Juventus. I am all for, from a U.S. men's national team perspective, from a Weston McKennie development perspective, I am all for him getting out of Juventus. It was always kind of an awkward fit personality-wise, and he's kind of talked about that since he came to Leeds. And this move was finalized. That he just... His get down, his personality, it's not a criticism. He's just not necessarily the guy made to play in a very rigid Italian structure. He's just kind of a free spirit. It's good things about it and it's got its bad things. So there's that part of it too. But the bigger thing is obviously what is happening with Juventus. You probably aren't playing in a Champions League. You might not be playing in a Europa League or a Conference League next season if you're Weston McKennie and you stay at Juventus. So the moving to the next club part of this makes complete sense to me. And this is a place where he's going to slot right in and play every single game in the Premier League. But it's also about that next step. Because it certainly seems like the intention is to make this permanent, assuming Leeds don't get relegated. And at that point, you now have 3 foundational members of the U.S. men's national team playing for a coach you know is going to go to bat for them on a team that does not look anywhere close to competing for a spot in a European competition. And I will back Jesse Marsch all day long. The reality is, he's on thin ice. Right? It's unless they dramatically turn things around, it is going to be a constant. People are going, questions about his job security. People are going to want him gone. And if this Weston McKennie deal becomes permanent, what happens if Marsch gets fired? Is it possible that Tyler Adams gets buried again? Now, he's been so good, I find that hard to believe. But it's within the realm of possibility. There is part of this that has to be acknowledged is that Jesse Marsch is making these guys feel confident and is a big reason why they're there. And I push back on this kind of U.S. men's national team notion because these guys fit what Jesse Marsch is doing outside of the fact that they're from the same country. Part of the reason McKennie is there is because he wants to do all of the things that Jesse Marsch wants his midfielders to do. Tyler Adams, Brendan Aronson, born to play in this kind of system. But all of a sudden you look up, and there, unless I'm missing somebody, and I really tried to go through, I don't think I did, there is not a single U.S. men's national team member who is likely to start in the Champions League knockout stage. You got players there. Okay, maybe Gio Reyna cracks Dortmund's lineup. It's possible. I expect him to come off the bench. Maybe Serginho Dest starts. He's been a backup at AC Milan. You know, there are... Nobody's expecting Christian Pulisic to start with the way things have gone at Chelsea and now all the money that just got spent again. There are players who are there. But you compare this to kind of where it was, and what did you have? You had Weston McKennie playing for Juventus. Sometimes he would start, maybe he would come off the bench, but he was contributing goals, he was getting minutes. Brendan Aronson was starting for Salzburg in European competition. Tyler Adams had a goal in the Champions League quarterfinals for Leipzig and was playing on a team in the Champions League. Now, again, playing time decreased at the end. But these three guys were three of the players in the best position to get regular playing time in European competition. And now they're all at a club that is nowhere near making that happen. And now you're starting to hear rumors of Tyler Adams potentially getting a move up, which we'll see if that happens. That's the reality of the situation when you play as well as he did and as well as he is for a Premier League team. Is there's going to be some interest from the kind of clubs that get you into European competition. So maybe that happens. But this is where I have a concern about this move, is if it just kind of gets comfortable at Leeds and there's, not a very strong presence from the U.S. men's national team in the European competitions on kind of the European stage, and then maybe Jesse Marsch gets fired. Maybe Jesse Marsch takes the U.S. men's national team job. I don't know. What happens then? Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams are too good to be spending a significant portion of their prime not playing in European competition when they were doing in their early 20s and performing fairly well. You saw what they could do at the World Cup. At some point, we got to acknowledge the downside to this whole Leeds thing, which is the more guys come there, the more important it is that that club does more than avoids relegation. Because playing in the Premier League is fun. It's cool. It's great competition every single week. There's certainly benefit to it. The other part is you got to have players playing in these European competitions. It's perfect for a guy like Brendan Aronson, who has that European experience and also needs to be challenged much more at the domestic league level. It's perfect for Tyler Adams, who's trying to kind of rebuild not rebuild his career, it's not like it fell apart, but trying to sort of get back on track after falling out of favor at Leipzig. Weston McKennie doesn't need any of that kind of rehabilitation or, he was starting for one of the biggest clubs in the world, playing in the Champions League. And now he's close to making a permanent move to a team that's nowhere close to European competition. It's not all bad, and it's not all good. But there are worrying things, because the positives to this are obvious. He's going to get playing. He's playing in the best league in the world. He's going to get plenty of playing time. It's a system that fits him really well. He knows, some of his teammates. He's familiar with his coach. All of that is great. There just is a downside to this that I don't think is getting talked about enough. And I just wonder if we're going to look up in a couple years, assuming Leeds stay up and kind of stay where they are. And we're going to start really wondering whether these guys were all better off making this move. And maybe not even making the move, but just kind of getting, maybe the better way to say it is getting back to that place where you're kind of looking around going, where are the U.S. internationals playing in the European competitions? And kind of, instead of being excited about where all of these guys are at in their careers, kind of getting frustrated that the progress hasn't been there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this works perfectly. But there are some valid concerns and valid questions that I wanted to bring up there as Weston McKennie joins Leeds United.